Do we need a D-Day for the VA? 70 years ago, America's heroic soldiers were rushing the shores of Normandy to save the world from fascists, and that spirit of self-sacrifice continues with our vets to this very day. So you would think Washington would be rushing to help them with their medical care. Well, not so, but we have a solution. Vouchers for vets, letting them get private care outside the broken government system. Is that the answer? Hi, everybody. I'm David Aslan. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus with Steve Forbes, Rich Karlgaard, Elizabeth McDonald is back, Sabrina Schaefer, Rick Unger, and John Tamny. Steve, vouchers for vets. What do you think?
Absolutely. Why shouldn't they have choice? And also, veterans who are above the age of 65 should be able to go and be encouraged to go on Medicare, use Medicare facilities so they get better care than the VA. The VA does a handful of things very well, but other areas they're subpar. Veterans should have the choice. That's the least we can do for them.
EMAC, what do you think?
Yeah, I want to fight for our vets. I mean, they fought for us. Of course, fight for them. I just worry that Congress is going to nickel and dime this kind of voucher system that, by the way, the American Legion doesn't like, and neither does the other veterans groups. Sort of like what they did with Medicare Advantage. I just worry that with the way Congress is behaving, they'll say to the vets, hey, here's your S&H green stamp of a voucher because we cut it back and we nickel and dimed you so much. And by the way, moving them into the private sector hospitals that are now becoming more like the DMV because of Obamacare with waiting lists there.
That's a good point.
So that's another issue, too.
That is an issue. But, John Tamny, we want choices. As Americans, we want choices, and no Americans deserve that more than the vets, right?
Yeah, well, anytime you empower the buyer with choice, you're going to get a better health care and better health care outcome. But more broadly, if we love the veterans, and we do, why would we have ever foisted upon them the substandard doctors and healthcare administrators that are logically going to be in a non-market program like the VA? We should have let them out long ago.
We should have, but Rick, it's was the idea that nobody can do it better than the government, and that idea has proved false, right?
Well, I'm not sure it's quite that simple, to be honest with you. I will say this. I clearly get the idea of vouchers, if not in the long term, and maybe even in the long term, absolutely in the short term. We know there's a problem getting these people in. We can't just let them sit and wait the way we've been doing it. If nothing else, we should create a voucher system that lets them go get the care they need today. Beyond that, let's be careful we don't throw out the VA. There's a lot of things they do better than anybody else, as Steve alluded to. And just quickly, let me add, we did take some steps this week with a bipartisan agreement in the Senate that may lead to solving some of these problems, including the opportunity.
Yeah, but Sabrina, I get the idea. Actually, I think John McCain was one of the first to put forth the idea of vouchers for vets. I get the impression that Democrats hate the word vouchers because they think of vouchers for school choice. They think of vouchers perhaps being used within Obamacare, and that they are allergic to that term. Do you get that sense?
I think you're right. Look, what we want is to make all hospitals VA hospitals, right? We want choice, flexibility, and competition. And I think that Democrats do recoil from that whole concept, right? The law that passed, or the bill that passed in the House, and the companion bill in the Senate that looks like it will pass, is expanding opportunities to go outside of the VA system, but it's not full choice, right? It's not full competition. That's the only way. If we give veterans, ownership and control, just like all Americans should have over their health care dollars, that will really see an improvement.
And Rich, as our options are narrowing, as EMAC pointed out, because of Obamacare, I think it'd be a perfect time to sort of expand our options a little bit, at least for one group of Americans.
Yeah, well, I agree with vouchers, but Lizzie said something really smart here, and that's that it is going to add to the crowding that's getting worse in the private health care system. What we need to do is really expand the supply. We need to remove the regulations. We need to bring in market forces and pricing transparency so that we get the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gates, the Jeff Bezos, the Mark Zuckerberg of medical technology. Because if we don't increase the supply and we only increase the demand, it's just going to get worse for everyone, veterans included.
Well, Steve, I'm wondering if this awful situation with the VA hospitals, if we could turn lemons into lemonade by showing the way to provide more choice for all Americans, just as EMAC was saying, just as our choices are getting narrowed by Obamacare. Maybe we can show how much better it would work if we had more choices.
Well, that's where vouchers come in, because then the patient makes the choice. You're not told by a third party where to go. And we do need that in the so-called private sector in health care, which is not real free markets. You get free markets in health care, we will turn scarcity into abundance, and we can have much more effective safety nets than the hodgepodge system we have today. We do it with food. No one starves. We have a lot of food. Government doesn't run the farms. If they did, we'd have no more obesity. We'd all be starving.
Rick, I saw you shaking your head at one point.
Well, yeah, I mean, first, let me point out that I'm a Democrat, and I can tell the difference between vouchers.
Hold on, wait a minute. Newsflash, you're a Democrat.
And yet I can still tell the difference between a voucher for the VA and a voucher for education. So, no, not all Democrats are allergic
What is the difference?
to the word.
What is the difference?
Well, a voucher for, actually, there's a pretty big difference. Vouchers for school says that you can go outside of your district, which would destroy a school district. Voucher for getting medical care, if you're eligible for the VA, it means you can choose whatever doctor you want.
Same thing.
No,
But
it's actually not. But let me.
Forgive me. It sounded like the same thing.
Quickly, Emac, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Rick. Go ahead. I'll cede my time to Rick.
Say, we have no shortage, Rich, when it comes to medical technology, and no shortage of dollars.
My God, we have a shortage of doctors. Wait a second.
Thank you. That's what I was just going to say. Don't get so shook up.
All right.
What we have a shortage of is physicians.
I've ceded my time, but not a half hour
an Obamacare problem.
Go ahead,
So
Emac.
here's the thing. I mean, listen, the problem right now, and here, to Rich Carlgard's point about getting more medical technology, the thing is, how do you get, to your point too, David, how do you get privatized thinking into a very, a sclerotic system that's growing around us right now? And the thing is, Congress sets the rules for accountability with the VA system. It's really hard to fire people in the VA hospitals. So you want to get the good guys in there, and you do want to get, of course, better care for our soldiers.
But it's not changing. Rich, the point is that VA hospitals are dominated practically like no other government bureaucracy by unions, by public sector unions that make it almost impossible to fire people.
Congress just passed a law.
Go ahead, Rich.
Well, you can't get any kind of dynamic change in that sort of environment. And to Rick's point that we have technology, look, an MRI machine today is like a mainframe computer 30 years ago. We need a revolution that completely changes the way we think about creating and delivering healthcare products and services. It could be really great.
And one of the union agreements with the VA, talk about unions, is 316 pages. You talk to doctors there, it's impossible to get real accountability.
And John Tamny, monopolies. I know Rick is against monopolies in the private sector. The worst monopoly are monopolies in the public sector.
Exactly.
We want to get rid of them.
Yeah, it's not a knock on government to say that anything government does well, the private sector could do much better. And I think this is applied to the things that the VA does well. Free up healthcare prices, let some rise. If so, you get what Rich Carlgard wants. You get the entrepreneurs who will come in and give better healthcare at better prices. Let the entrepreneurs into the system.
And Sabrina, let's prove, okay, we have this test of whether the public sector or the private sector does better. Let's roll out that experiment and see how it works with the VA, and then maybe see how the vouchers work with education, then maybe see how they work within Obamacare.
And this is why I think we need to have a really robust conversation about which policies are best. I know that there is an absolute urgency right now to handle this situation. It should have been handled decades ago. But the reality is there are different drawbacks and positive forces for different kinds of policies. Vouchers in education are not a silver bullet. There's all sorts of problems with them in the courts. Tax credits may be a better approach here. So I think we need to open this conversation up and not rush so quickly that we actually make a bigger mistake.
Okay, but Steve, what is a solution is competition. And whenever you have a monopoly that squeezes out competition, the worst monopoly is a public sector monopoly, you got problems.
You do indeed. And when you open things up, as we saw with the Internet, when it's part of the government going nowhere, liberated in the public sector, my God, it's changed the whole world. And cell phones, $3,995 30 years ago, give them away today.
Liberation. Let's start with the VA. The vets deserve it.